Final Fantasy VIII has been called an epic game, and it is, if epic means boring. A travesty, a mockery of the good name of Final Fantasy. Final Fantasy VIII is an odd game to talk about because it's sort of a conundrum. By many standards, it's viewed as a major success. It reviewed well upon release, sold over 8 million units on its native hardware, and was considered a technical marvel considering the limitations of the PlayStation 1. Yet to some, it's the black sheep of the original Final Fantasy Golden Era. There are legit Final Fantasy fans that don't mess with FF8. This minority has only grown over time as certain aspects haven't aged too well. Its only frontline defenders seem to be the Goths, who at one time resonated with Squall. But if your Wakanda army looks like a Green Day concert, you are already dead. But does it deserve this retroactive hatred? Why is FF8 disappointing to some fans, disliked and dismissed, yet beloved, defended, and championed by others? Well, I think I have the answer. It's because it dared to be different, from its gameplay to its world. FF8 was and is still unique, as it broke the conventions of previous Final Fantasy games, pushing the series into a more adult art direction, all while carrying the pressure of surpassing FF7. I've seen fans try to say that the reason FF8 is disliked is because it followed in the footsteps of Final Fantasy VII. Were those massive shoes to fill? Of course, and it would be hard for any game to live up to that pressure. However, some of VII's success did benefit Final Fantasy VIII. Look at the budget. Look at the technical and graphical improvements. Not to mention how the success of Final Fantasy VII ensured Square that whatever they wanted to do for Final Fantasy VIII, they could. It's probably why the game's so damn weird. There are genuinely great aspects of FF8 that even its biggest detractors must give merit, such as its fantastic music. Not to mention its forward-thinking inclusion of Triple Triad, and of course, its vibes. The tranquil-like dreamscape that FF8 creates with its world building. But there are also points of contention. Ideas, gameplay choices, and more that seemingly alienate fans and first-time enjoyers alike. To use an analogy, I think FF8 is a podiatrist and a family of surgeons. Still a doctor, but not quite. On the surface, it may look like a typical Final Fantasy. Great music, airship, similar gameplay pacing, chickens, princesses, guys who like punching stuff. It's the FF formula on the surface. I can see why people thought this to be similar to the previous titles, bought into the hype, especially after seeing the amazing cutscenes of the game. To say that Final Fantasy VIII was a technical marvel at the time might be an understatement. Like, the presentation here is still remarkable. There are still things that when you go back and look, you're like, wow, this shit came on the PlayStation 1 in '99 with a development time less than 2 years? It's impressive. The cutscenes, the effects, the music. It's Final Fantasy proper. Then the FF magic kicks in and shit gets weird. There are monsters, there are diabetic aliens in a basement. You take over a dragon spaceship overrun with monsters, and this dragon spaceship has a penis cannon. You escape from prison, time travel, fight wizards and Daft Punk fans. You get yeeted to the moon by a catapult. There are motorcycles jumping at your mobile base, a base, mind you, that houses legions of child mercenary soldiers and training room dinosaurs. Why dinos, by the way? Is it because the school and the youths really have a thing for dinosaurs? Or is it because if you can kick a T-Rex's ass, you can survive anything? Who knows? The evil location in this game is just a big-ass floating rock with a badass name. Lunatic Pandora. There is an orgy of evil in the streets with people breakdancing like, oh yeah, hell Satan. You can watch in real time as bystanders are made into accomplices. I mean, for God's sakes, there is an army of monsters living on the moon. Again, let me say that again. An army of monsters on the moon. Like, if you went around to the world of FF8, like to a random NPC, and tried to tell them that, no one would believe you. You know the world is weird when not even the inhabitants of the world believe the plot that is happening. Now, you can say that every Final Fantasy game has this much audacity and weirdness, and I can't really disagree. But what all of those other games have is a cohesive element, an essential theme, or a design philosophy that brings it all together. Yet I don't see that in Final Fantasy VIII. It's like it was intentionally made not to fit together, and that's what makes the world such a beautiful place. It's weird and cozy and serene, while also being utterly bizarre. The world still feels organic, and the contrast between the locations can sometimes match the bizarre nature of the story. When the characters are bewildered, you will be too. As soon as you try to classify the art style, late 90s sci-fi like the Phantom Menace, the FF8 magic kicks in and you get meat slapped with more bizarre stuff. When you explore FF8, you truly don't know what you're going to encounter. And I think this can give people art direction and tonal whiplash more than usual for the series. I mean, the ending is a Resident Evil haunted castle with insane puzzles and a boss gauntlet. Should this work? No. And it doesn't for a lot of people, but it did for me. However, I can see why people can grow frustrated with a mixed bag. Final Fantasy VIII can feel like a game where you went and took a single piece out of 52 different puzzle boxes and smashed them together. This unique approach to world building and setting can alienate as much as it can inspire. But this almost need to be original and creative doesn't just happen in the presentation or setting, it also extends to the gameplay, namely the combat. This is where you often see the biggest complaints of Final Fantasy VIII, the junction system. Now, a lot of people's complaints of the junction system seem to stem from a place of misunderstanding because the system is very complex and the game at times can be weird in how it presents itself. However, I might be in the minority here because I continue to think the endgame tutorial does a good job explaining the system and ramping up complexities as you play. The junction system has strengths and can feel like a sea of customization with impressive depth. However, there are poor elements that even I, a defender of the system, think sink the gameplay. You see, I like the draw system. I do. I think drawing spells from enemies and even using their own spells against them is just a cool, unique concept, when it isn't tedious, boring, and poorly balanced. Even the characters that don't use spells need them in great number, and the characters that do use spells are punished for doing so. Melee builds are dependent on spells to even be viable. You need big spells in big number to boost your strength. You need aura spells to access limit breaks. You need status and element spells to put into your weapons. What sucks is that these characters aren't good at drawing spells because your draw power is tied to your magic score, which can only be raised by having lots of spells junctioned there, which is hard to do because you can't draw them well or fast. You see the problem? People say the system can feel tedious and unintuitive, and at times, I must agree. Even the other methods to acquire spells are slow, like crafting spells. It requires AP unlocks, crafting materials to be farmed, and some spells have terrible conversion rates. You can turn tents into curagas, that's cool, but other items are just a waste and inefficient. This is also depending on you having recipes unlocked from GFs, and these GFs, if missed, are gone until late game, which is just another bizarre gameplay choice. You can also turn enemies into cards and those cards into spells, which to be fair is Yu-Gi-Oh! Levels dope as shit. But come on, we're just making the entire process more tedious. Not to mention, you still need to do any and all of these things for multiple characters, for multiple spells, for multiple attributes. The excuse people use in defense of the system is claiming that players don't need to stockpile spells. Yeah, I'm calling bullshit. It's literally the solution to when you are stuck or getting sunned by a boss. Get more spells and junction. The entire game is built on spell scarcity, which is both a blessing and a curse. Not having an MP bar is rare, I mean rare, for a JRPG and in the series as a whole. It's such a cool concept. It gives the game a distinction. But how these spells are harvested and the economy built around them can lead to some grinding, and not with your mother. The junction system creates a greed-fueled need for spells that then hopes the boring process works as a deterrent. It creates an emptying gas tank you'll be forced to refill or become weaker as a result, while also further punishing your party members that actually use the spells. Spells become money and oil. You lose yourself to it. Want to know why the Middle East is the way it is? The junction system. Players will feel the need to draw, stockpile, and harvest any and everything, which might lead to unfun play patterns. And those who don't will miss out on essential GFs, spells, and more. I can appreciate the depth of choice and playstyle here, and I don't want that to be missed. I like the scarcity of spells and finding weird GF combos. I think the system is really fun once you know the system and can naturally avoid its pitfalls. I feel, and hopefully fellow FF8 enjoyers would endorse this, that the junction system gets better with knowledge, which is why I see some longtime fans defending it. But that level of knowledge and comfortability has a massive learning curve. It's a memorable system, truthfully. Like, you remember the junction system. Like, some people are still chasing the dragon with this system because of the hands-off depth it offered. Finding 7 Ultimas and deciding where to stick them is such a unique concept. Finding the perfect build, GF combos, unique abilities, and allocating the correct spells. It can be such a fulfilling process that other games haven't dared to attempt. But for some players, it's not wet dreams, it's nightmares. The uniqueness of the system doesn't make it great, but this might be the only battle system in Final Fantasy history in which the depth might be too much. What hurts the system even further, though, is the level scaling. In order to protect players from the sheer depth of the junction system, the team thought it wise to level up the world to match the player. I can rationalize this decision, but its implementation is just as bizarre as the setting. The system doesn't account for equipped GFs, junctions, spells, or player skill. It only looks at player level, which is a terrible indicator of player skill and power. While yes, it's cool to lower or raise an enemy's level, and because of the scaling, there seems to always be a sense of difficulty for you to overcome. Regardless, the system is often too punishing or easily manipulated. Since gaining levels does nothing, you'll often rely on junctioning spells to raise your stats. The game quite literally turns what should be a skill issue into a spell issue. What I've noticed is that its strongest defenders within the fandom are the same ones who know how to break the system. It's like security at a bank ensuring you the bank's impenetrable, while also knowing how to rob it within minutes. On top of this, add in summons that have literal health bars, timing-based attacks, limit breaks with weird timing, almost being broken where you can use them all the time or can go literal discs without using them, and passive income. Yes, passive income. Why kill enemies for Gil when you can just sit around and wait for your mercenary check to come in the mail? Again, not all of these things work for newer players, and rightfully so. But I respect the hell out of FF8 for trying to be different. It recycled old ideas while mixing them with new ideas that the series had never seen before. These flavorful design choices were destined to divide people, as it breaks some of the traditional design elements the series was known for then and now. But it's not just setting, or even gameplay. FF8 dared to do something different with its storytelling as well. Despite being a compelling saga by credits' end, the journey to it is a wild one that some players might struggle with. Because, to be honest, there are some wild elements that even I struggle to comprehend. And no, I'm not talking about the evil orgy in the streets, daddy like. I'm talking about the game's big twists and moments. One of FF8's biggest twists is learning that our entire party grew up together in an orphanage, that the characters weren't strangers at all. Myself and others think this twist is odd, to put it nicely, because it kinda doesn't work and hurts the characterizations. To me, one of the best parts of this game was how the party comes together. It's a group of misfits and weirdos. You have a soulless leader who doesn't want to lead. You have a sharpshooter who doesn't want to shoot. Different walks of life all coming together. Now, when you drop a massive wrench into this, when you introduce a web of supernatural convenience, things get messy. It can rob characters of interesting backstories. Why does Cypher hate Zell? Well, he's always hated him. Why does Cypher and Squall have a rivalry? Well, they always have. Why does Irvin have performance anxiety? Well, he's always been like that. Yes, but why? The only person shaped by these events are Squall, who's grown to be distant, isolated person after losing his sister during this time. Everyone else is stuck as their original characters and looking forward, get very little progression or growth. Did any of these experiences shape or affect the other characters? Maybe? The worst thing a reveal can do is nothing, and that's what some of the twists do in FF8. They feel empty. Take Zell, who just learned that he was adopted and that the parents we've interacted with throughout the game aren't his actual parents. Does this change anything for the character? No. Does he regret that face tattoo yet? Still a no. Quistis confuses her romantic feelings for Squall because they grew up together. But why didn't she do this with all of the other characters? Again, who knows? Final Fantasy VIII has a giant web of convenience that when thought about too hard, seems more unlikely than the moonful of monsters. I can see why some fans yell, "Oh, bullshit," as the game continues to pull more and more convenience out of its ass. It's like the Breakfast Club. Imagine at the end, you found out they were all siblings. Would it make it a better movie? No. Unless you're a fan of incest, which then you'd probably like it more. While FF8's story might not work for some, it does for others, as some fans like the destined group and their shared history, the coming-of-age story that links the entire party together. It's because of this web of convenience that a popular fan theory has arisen, Squall is dead, where fans have leaned into the convenience for their own storytelling purposes. Even the devs themselves have said, yeah, it's a pretty interesting thought. Regardless of how you feel, it is a twist for the ages, as it's hard to forget the entire narrative being pulled from under you. That's what FF8's story is in its entirety, though. Insanity. The Laguna mystery being built up to reveal he's actually Squall's father, then never actually confirming it. It's like a show that got canceled before the final season. The evil sorceress can take over people? Oh no, the most obvious twist in gaming history. Cypher goes from your Pokemon rival to working at a Bass Pro Shop. We also got time travel shenanigans and more. FF8 wasn't afraid to try things, to bend logic, pacing, and plot to fulfill its desires. Regardless of how you feel, there is one constant: its characters. Squall, our main character, despite starting the game as the type of guy to yell slurs on Call of Duty, grows into an actual character, an actual leader. It's during this time the romantic shipping between the two characters gets taken to another level. While some will complain about the sappy love story, I actually think it's one of the better parts of the story for a simple reason. It adds stakes. Characters are just more compelling when they have something they don't want to lose. Whether you agree where the story went or not, the characters and the flavorful choices remain throughout the experience. Does it all work? In my opinion, no. But sometimes being bitter is better than being bland. And that is the one thing I don't think FF8 struggles with: being bland. I don't judge anyone who proudly states FF8 is their favorite because truthfully, art is subjective. The aspects some find trash, others unashamedly love. And when you have a game this eccentric, it's naturally going to radicalize those who play it. FF8 is unorthodox in everything it does. It's like a boxer who throws kicks. And I know what you're saying, Alex, that's a kickboxer. And no, it's not. FF8 is a boxer who throws kicks, as dumb and as idiotic as that sounds. Again, I am not saying because FF8 is original or different that it should be loved. I just think it's fascinating to see a company that when given success and a massive budget, they went and got weird. That they decided to change things up and push boundaries instead of playing it safe. FF8 is not trying to be Shakespeare. It's a melodramatic roller coaster that leaves some disoriented and others begging for more. But the question is, does it deserve the hate? Well, you've heard my opinion. So let me know yours down in the comments. And if you don't agree with my opinions in this video, I just gotta hit you with that, whatever.